All right, we will call to order the Budget and Audit Committee meeting for, where are we here? March 10th. It's already March 10th,
Wow.
2026. You'd be really shocked if I said it was March 10th, 2028, wouldn't you? Yeah, then you'd be worried. All right, good morning to everybody. We're glad to have you join us. Just a couple of items. If you wish to speak on any item on our agenda, you're welcome to do that. Please fill out a form and turn that into our clerk at the front of the chambers. When your name is called, please come to the podium and keep an eye on the clock because you have 2 minutes for your comments. So we want you to make sure you get everything in that you want to communicate to us. With that, I think we need to call a quorum.
Yes, please. Councilmember Talamantes?
Here.
Councilmember Maple?
Here.
Expect Councilmember Guerra momentarily, and Chair Dickinson.
Here. Okay.
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Would you mind
Certainly.
doing the acknowledgement and
Rise
the pledge?
if you are able. Please rise for the opening acknowledgements in honor of Sacramento's indigenous peoples and tribal lands. To the original people of this land, the Nisenan people, the Southern Maidu, Valley and Plains Miwok, Patwin Wintun peoples, and the people of the Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe. May we acknowledge and honor the Native people who came before us and still walk beside us today on these ancestral lands by choosing to gather today in the active practice of acknowledgement and appreciation for Sacramento's indigenous people's history, contributions, and lives. Thank you. Remain standing. We'll salute and pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk.
So, Chair, we move to the consent calendar. We have items 1 and 2. I do have one speaker on consent.
Okay, do we have anyone who wishes to speak on those items?
I do. Lambert would like to speak on item 2.
Okay. Good morning.
I'm a big fan of the whistleblower. I wasn't at first, but when the former person caught some people, then I was really proud because I was at Arts and Culture yesterday trying to get clarity, and they were very protective of that. But during the whistleblower, which is a great program if it's fair, impartial, and they were able to catch a group that actually received a no written agreement. That's a stickler for a person in business. A no written agreement, and then they said they couldn't audit it. I don't know any, if you're in business, you should be able to audit anybody. There's no such thing as you can't audit someone. The IRS, I've been audited, and they want your bank statements. So they should have, the city should be required to submit bank statements on Wide Open Walls and the other group that was connected to them. That's a lot of money that they said they couldn't track. And so my question has been, and will always be, and we're gonna stay on it, is who wrote the checks from City Hall? Who wrote the checks to this group? Even though you can't audit it, you can't tell me that they wrote their own checks, because if they wrote their own checks, then you got a major problem. So, because we've submitted a lot of paperwork to this city, specifically the city manager's department, and we've run across so much resistance that it's inspired me to pursue something like a no written agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis.
Chair, I have no more speakers.
Okay,
Consent.
we have a motion by
I'll second.
Councilmember Maple, seconded by Vice Mayor Talamantes. If there's nothing further, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, and we'll go on to item 3.
Item 3 is your fiscal year 2026-27 budget survey results.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Is it up?
Good morning, council members. My name's Marthala Santizo. Today I'm presenting the results of the fiscal year 27 budget survey. Okay. So for this year's survey, we made a few changes to the process. The first change was the length of time that it was open to the public. The survey was open from October 22nd to January 20th, which was approximately 3 months, and this is 1 month longer than it was last year. The survey was also translated into 7 languages. This year we added Russian. And also for new outreach and communication, the survey was added to the city Spotlight employee newsletter and featured on the city's homepage of the website during the tenure of the survey. This is in addition to what we did last year, which was adding it to the monthly communication toolkit that was sent to neighborhood associations, chambers of commerce, property business improvement districts. We also posted the survey link on city social media, sent it to community engagement teams distribution list, shared it with our 18 community ambassadors, promoted on the weekly Sac Vibes vlog, and various other city websites and newsletters that goes out to the community. So overall, our media and communications engagement team worked hard to get the budget survey out to community and businesses. Before I go into the detailed charts that will be in the next several slides, I have a few highlights that I just want to mention. The survey was 10 questions long this year. We received 531 responses, and all of them were in English, even though we offered it in various languages. The majority of the survey takers supported reducing expenses to balance the budget, and that was at 40%. 41% agreed with council's top 3 priorities that were decided in September, so public safety, homelessness, and economic development. And then for the number of participants who did not agree, their choices were public safety, homelessness, and housing. So as mentioned in the previous slide, 40% would like the city to reduce expenses to balance the budget. Not far behind was 38% who believe that a combination of increasing revenues and cutting expenses could be employed. So compared to last year's survey, the combination option was actually the majority. So this year it switched to cutting expenses. Okay. When asked about revenue-generating strategies, 50% of the survey takers opposed any increases to taxes and fees. 31% felt that increasing city permit fees could be considered. And last year, those 2 choices were actually tied at 41%. So we're starting to see just a deviation from people's choices. Okay, so this year, the top 5 expense reductions are the police department, climate programs, capital projects, homelessness programs, and arts and culture. Arts and culture is a new one this year. The other 4 have been in the top 5 for the last few years. And then, as mentioned in the highlights, the survey takers who disagreed with council's top 3 priorities believe that public safety, homelessness, and housing are the top priorities. Economic development, which is one of council's top priorities, is landed kind of in the bottom half of their survey results. And then finally, a change from last year's is the public support of using contractors in lieu of city employees. 51% of the respondents support it. Last year, 50% of the public said no. Okay. So these were just the highlights. The entire survey results are in the staff report, but this is the conclusion of my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I think we probably should just note that this is not a scientific sample.
It is not, no.
So with that, Vice Mayor Talamantes. Yeah, go ahead. We'll take questions first.
Okay. So the top 5 expense reductions are police department, climate programs, capital, homelessness, arts and culture. But then the top ranking for the community survey are also public safety, homelessness, and housing. So I guess my question is, the priorities are also where we got to cut, is kind of what the community is saying. But how do we structure the survey differently so that we can get better answers and better direction from the community? Or what's your understanding of the data that we've gotten?
So last year, we actually kind of broke up the different priorities and kind of extended it a little bit more to maybe see what the public felt in regards to public safety and what that meant for them. We did not do it this year because of the fact that the council's priority changed, but we could also do that next year to see, you know, maybe what they consider to be public safety is different than having the police department at a certain level versus, you know, other types of public safety methods that they may be thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate that we do this. I know it's not something that every city does, but I think it's really important for us to be able to ground our, you know, our decisions and what we hear from our own constituents with also, you know, some data citywide that helps us understand where people fall. I did think it was interesting that some of that 59% don't actually agree of the respondents, noting that that's actually, you know, it's 525 people, right? So a little bit different than the totality of the city population, but it was really interesting that they didn't agree with the top 3 priorities and actually wanted to add in housing and homelessness as a part of that, and then not necessarily economic development, though. I think understanding how those things are described is probably important, because what I found with something like economic development, even on this council, is you could probably find like 9 different descriptions for what that means. Just an interesting data point, but just wanted to thank you for doing the survey, and thank you for the constant improvement to it. I think that's really important for us to do, to get that feedback and make sure that we update it every year. So I know that I'll be taking a look at these as I consider and the budget. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I just want to note that this is the 3rd year that we've done it. So every year we've tried to do something different based off like what the public has told us. The other thing I also want to note is that public safety, homelessness, and housing has been the consistent 3 that the public has chosen. So they haven't really deviated from what they've stated from the very beginning. So.
Thank you.
Well, I too appreciate the presentation, although I do think in contemplating whether we do this next year, it would be wise to take a step back, because we're getting, although all information is useful to some extent, I think a question can fairly be asked whether this is information that's useful given the time and expense put into it. And that comes not just from the fact that the sample is not representative. It's also quite skewed in terms of what parts of the city it comes from, for example, as well. But when it's done, so when doing it, even starting sooner in December into the early part of the year, is really, to a certain extent, in a vacuum from the budget perspective. I mean, we get some information about what the budget looks like, but for people who are trying to decide, gee, should we think about raising fees? Should we not? Should we do this? We're getting more, I think, just general feelings about that, as opposed to situationally specific feelings, because of the time when you're conducting the survey. So whether or not we continue to do this, I think is a fair question. And if we do, then looking at how it might yield some results that we'd have some confidence in as reflecting sentiments of those in the city, I think is an important consideration. So, but I appreciate the work that's done. I know you put in a lot of work on this. So, and a lot of effort to try to get response. I don't want to minimize the effort you go to try to get response as well. So I think that's all the questions we have. This is, I'm assuming it's a receive and file. And we have some members of the public who would like to address us on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have 2 speakers, Lambert and Keon Bliss.
No, I'm really inspired, Mr. Dickerson, that you are the chair because you're using words that I use, which are skewered. See, when I look at these graphs, and I'm not doubting whether they did a good job or not, think about this. You spent money, I would assume, you spent money to put all of the questions in different languages, and you received 0 responses in those languages. So what was the expense used to do that? What made people in different languages not respond when they said it's in different languages? See, that's part of your structural deficit. Also, and I will say this and say it with confidence, I go to a lot of commissions. I was at a commission last night, Arts and Culture. And all of the commissions I go to, 90% of the times I see one person there that's always there. And that's why she should be the highest paid at City Hall. And that's Minty Cuppy. And I'm not saying that because she pays me. I'm talking about earning your stripes. You shouldn't get a raise if you're not doing anything. You should, as a matter of fact, I believe people working remotely, and I've said this, and we have the millennials looking into this, how much money can be saved not giving people a raise working remotely? Not laying them off, but not giving them raises. I mean, there have been studies on 60 Minutes where women and men are starting to take their children to school in their house clothes. They didn't used to do that because when they dropped their children off, they had to go to work. And they're getting raises for that. And I've heard that they get raises for the internet by using it at their home.
Thank you for your comments. Keon Bliss?
Morning.
Good morning. 531 respondents for this year's survey. Last year, it was 796 respondents, and the year before was 1,587. Why is that? I can tell you a novel theory. It's probably because people have lost any real faith that anything comes out of these budget surveys, because for the last 3 years in a row since we've done them, council and city management has effectively ignored all of the priorities that were listed, as well as the priorities for reduction cuts, which notably, all 3 years in a row, the police department and capital projects have sat up at the top of 4 priorities. And yet, each year, the department's budget raises and other programs that people care about, programs that actually would address homelessness, end up getting cut. I don't think that we should simply do away with survey results. Anybody that's thinking that is simply afraid of what the answer is going to be the 4th year or the 5th year coming up. What we actually need is to make this a priority, to reach out to as many community members as possible, which this council absolutely has authority to do and power to do. It's called budget town halls. There are cities like Oakland that do budget town halls in every single city council district, 7 districts, leading up to the budget hearings that they have. Where are ours? I see a couple that are supposed to be coming up, but we need to actually make that a priority in this council, and we also need to do this survey longer than just a few months. Why not start when the department heads are actually looking at what's left of the previous year's budget back in December, in January?
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Chair, I don't have any more speakers.
All right, thanks for the comments. We've reviewed, commented, and provided direction. Clear as mud. Okay, we can move on to the next item. We're going to take item 5 first, and then item 4. So we can talk about the proposed work plan first. So if you can read that item for us, then we'll.
Thank you, Chair. Item 5 is the city auditor's proposed work plan for fiscal year 26-27.
Morning.
Good morning. All right, I'm First Arari. I'm your city auditor. With me today is Kevin Christensen, my assistant director, who helped me put this work plan together. The recommendation that is before you today is to review the potential audits and pass a motion selecting the audits to be included in the city auditor's proposed work plan for fiscal year 26-27 and forward to the city council for final approval. Before we go into the details of the proposed audits, I want to do a brief overview of the agenda today and note that the work plan development process is a little bit different this year. In the past years, my office would typically present our work plan to the committee for acceptance and approval. This year, I wanted to structure the process in a way that affords the Budget and Audit Committee a greater opportunity to provide input on the audits that ultimately make it onto the work plan. To help ground the discussion, I'll start briefly reviewing some of the audits and projects that our office has completed over the last few years, as well as those that we expect to complete by the end of this current fiscal year. And this will provide some context regarding the types of projects our office undertake and have recently completed. Next, I'll walk through the projects that are currently on the fiscal year 25-26 work plan that have not yet been initiated, but that we plan to begin before the end of the fiscal year. And as you know, the work plan is developed with the intention of initiating all approved projects during the fiscal year. However, over the past couple years, our office has been working to catch up from prior staffing vacancies and transitions. And in addition, audits often take longer than anticipated, and unplanned work such as investigations or emerging issues can require us to redirect some of our staffing resources. So because of this, there are some projects on the current work plan that we will not be able to initiate before the end of the fiscal year. These projects, they're typically rolled over to the next year's work plan. However, the committee will have an opportunity to recommend whether any of those projects should be removed in order to make room for new priorities. And finally, I'll walk through 6 proposed projects that have been submitted for consideration for fiscal year 26-27 work plan. These proposed projects were developed through discussions with council members, conversations with the executive team, and the results of our internal risk assessment process. The goal of today's discussion is to give the committee the opportunity to review these projects, provide feedback, and help prioritize which audits should be included in the proposed fiscal year 26-27 work plan before it's presented to the full council for approval. So let's start with a quick overview of some of the audits that we completed. During fiscal year 23, we completed the audits of code enforcement, the Cannabis Code Enforcement Unit, city's financial condition, and Wide Open Walls and David Soban events. We also completed our language access gap analysis, survey results, and policy recommendations. During fiscal year 24, we completed the projects listed here. This was the first year in which we conducted the report for the Sacramento Children's Fund, where we calculated the baseline funding expenditures. We also conducted our community survey, diversity assessments, and audit of the police department's sexual assault kits. We also released our first review of the city's homeless response. During fiscal year 25, we completed our next report on the city's homeless response, which reviewed the city motel program. We also conducted audits of police department's military equipment use policy and inventory practices, Animal Care Services Division, and the Sacramento Ethics Commission. In addition, we conducted fund reviews of the water and wastewater funds and completed our charter-mandated annual audit of cannabis business operations tax revenue and baseline funding verification for the Sacramento Children's Fund. This current fiscal year, we've completed our cannabis business operations tax audit and the baseline funding verification for the Sacramento Children's Fund. We also just completed our community survey, which we'll be presenting next. And we anticipate completing the following projects before the end of the fiscal year. Audits of emergency medical services, evidence and property division, our 2025 workforce diversity and salary trends, our Department of Utilities energy use related to power purchase agreements and solar shares, and costs and outcomes of the city's homeless shelters. As you can see, we'll be quite busy for the next few months. By the end of the fiscal year in June, we anticipate that we will still have the following projects in progress. The audit of the city's transient occupancy tax, which we anticipate will be completed early next fiscal year. Our storm drainage fund review, potential cost savings and revenue recovery audit of the city's telecommunications and utility services, and the audit of the EEO complaint investigation and resolution practices, which we recently reinitiated. And as we complete some of our projects prior to the end of the fiscal year, we also anticipate that we'll be initiating these projects before the end of the year. The audit of pedestrian safety, code compliance, night team, the city's radio systems, and we also plan to start our project regarding the comparative cannabis code analysis. And as I mentioned, we do have some recurring projects that our office conducts, such as the annual audit of cannabis business operations tax revenue and the baseline funding verification for the Sacramento Children's Fund. These projects keep our entire office busy from about September through December each year. And the City Council has also requested that our office regularly conduct diversity assessments. So for fiscal year 26-27, we'll be conducting our triennial diversity review of employment applications, hires, and separations. The first two items listed here, they're mandated by the city charter and are required to be completed by our office. But the City Council does have the authority to change the frequency of the diversity reviews or direct our office to no longer conduct these if you'd like. So these are projects that were included in our current fiscal year work plan, but will not be initiated before the end of the fiscal year. And so consistent with past practice, these projects are proposed to be carried forward to the fiscal year 26-27 work plan, unless the Budget and Audit Committee recommends removing or reprioritizing any of them. Brief language on the objective and scope of these audits is included in the fiscal year 26-27 proposed work plan staff report. One that I do want to point out is the business operations tax project on our research analysis side. The objective of this project was to evaluate the financial impact of BOT and provide some benchmarking analysis and consider equity factors in the potential updates to the BOT. In discussions with the Finance Department, it appears that they've already undertaken some of this work as part of the ballot measure discussions. So my question is whether or not the committee wants me to roll this project over to the next work plan. So now I'm going to go over the 6 proposed audits for the committee to consider adding to the upcoming work plan. So the first proposed audit is another audit of the city's homeless response. If you recall, our preliminary report on the city's homeless response identified several areas that we could audit, and this is one of those areas that is focused on the city's homeless response protocol and the effectiveness of our interdepartmental coordination efforts. I'm not going to read that entire objective and scope in the proposal, but the audit would evaluate whether our response protocol and department coordination is operating efficiently and effectively. And we'll also review response times and resource deployment and alignment with the Federal Emergency Management Agency's National Incident Management System framework. The next proposed audit is an audit of the police department's overtime practices. The objective of this audit will be to assess whether the department's overtime policies and practices are aligned with applicable laws, labor agreements, city policies, and best practices, and whether the department consistently follows those established policies and procedures. And the audit will also evaluate the effect of staffing vacancies and other operational factors on the use of overtime. The next proposed audit is one of the Community Development Department's code enforcement operations. This audit will determine whether the city investigates code enforcement complaints in a timely manner and effectively resolve identified violations in accordance with laws, policies, and service standards. And I want to note that we do have another audit of code enforcement's night team that I mentioned that we plan to start before the end of June. So if this one is approved, we would have 2 audits of code enforcement back to back. They are 2 different audits with 2 different areas of review, so we could do them both, or if the committee wants to replace one with the other, that is also an option. Then I believe you all attended the State of Downtown event last month and heard the speaker discuss the walkability of downtown Sacramento. So this proposed assessment will determine whether the city has designed, implemented, and prioritized policies, street design, land use strategies, and capital investments that make downtown Sacramento safe and walkable. And depending on what you'd like to get out of this assessment, this project might need to be contracted out. And if that is the case, we would need to identify funding for the project if it's selected. The next proposed audit is of the Department of Public Works, Urban Forestry Operations and Maintenance. This audit would assess whether the city's tree inspection and trimming program is effectively and efficiently designed and operating to protect public safety and meet service level expectations. The audit will evaluate whether service requests are prioritized and completed timely based on risk, whether the tree registry is complete and reliable, whether inspections and trimmings occur within established cycles, whether work is scheduled for geographic efficiency, and whether staffing levels and skill mix are aligned with workload demand and backlog prevention. We typically try not to have multiple audits of the same department in the same work plan, so I do want to note that the pedestrian safety audit would also involve the Public Works Department, and if selected, so would the walkability assessment. So that's something to consider when determining which audits you want to select. And the last proposed audit is an external review of financial management and budgeting practices. As you heard during last week's city council meeting, several council members and the city manager have discussed a desire to get an external forensic audit of the city's financial management framework, budgeting practices, financial reporting processes, and internal controls. This audit would be contracted out, but managed by my office. And as you know, the city does receive annual audits of its financial statements that include assessments of internal controls. So we would try to work on the scope of services for this project to be different than what they already get done in that project. And so again, if this audit is selected, I would need funding for contracting it out. All right, so those are all the proposed audits. I'm looking for direction on 3 to 4 projects to add to the fiscal year 26-27 work plan. If the projects that are contracted out are selected, I can add 4. Otherwise, I would ask that no more than 3 get added to the work plan. And as a reminder, if we do want to select more than that, we could remove some of the projects that are being rolled over or have not started yet. And then one final thing to note is that this proposed work plan does not reflect the potential impacts of the 15% budget balancing strategies that were submitted by my office. So if those strategies are ultimately selected by the council, the office would lose 1 senior auditor, and this would impact our ability to complete the work plan. In addition, the proposed strategies do include discontinuing the biannual community survey, which wouldn't impact our next year's work plan, but it would impact the fiscal year 27-28. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. There's a lot to chew on here.
Yes.
And before I turn to my colleagues, I just wondered first, is there essentially a 1-for-1 trade-off if we decided to recommend to the full council that we delete something that you have scheduled to begin in the 26-27 year, and then substitute for it something among those suggested that you just outlined for us? Is it really, does it work pretty much as a one-to-one trade?
I mean, it could be not necessarily on the research analysis side. They're not full-on audits, so we do anticipate that those projects take less time to complete and less resources, whereas the ones that are being proposed, most of them, except for the walkability assessment, which would potentially be contracted out, are pretty much full-on audits. They will take longer to complete than like the BOT project.
Okay, then I think as we go through this conversation that you should advise us if we're getting a one-to-one trade-off. If one of us says, hey, why don't we not do this and do that instead, tell us whether that really equates for you as a one-to-one or something less than that.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Do we have any public comment on this?
Why don't we go ahead and ask our questions?
Okay, sure. First, I think, well, I was just going to express my interest in the homelessness response plan, and I think, this is unfortunately one of those that has a lot of council members responding to. They're being pulled throughout the entire city in different directions, and so I think figuring out our most effective way of being able to deliver those services is important. So for me, I think, how do we do process improvement? I really appreciate all the work that Brian Pedro has done, and it's made a significant impact and changes in impact. So, and I'm recommending not so much that I think that we're not doing well. I know that there's a lot of challenges when every council office has a different challenge in how to pulling those limited resources. So for me, I think, given top of mind of what I'm hearing from constituents a lot right now, is that responsiveness and how do we address that responsiveness. This will also help us I think, identify where the demand is, and are we appropriately, staffing the demand for the office as well. So I don't know if there's thoughts on that first, but not so much of a question, but at least an interest of mine, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, and Councilmember Maple.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I organized my thoughts in a few different ways. The first one, and I know we'll have more discussions about this in the general budget discussions, is I'm really concerned about any cuts to the auditor's department. They're already operating on bare bones, like many of our other departments that report directly to the city council. And so, especially with the importance of the work that you do. So I just want to state that out loud, that I think, it's relevant to this conversation, because we may say, hey, we want you to do all these things, and then if we end up cutting your budget by 15%, you can't do the things that we've committed to, and then we're just going back and doing it all over again. So that's just something I want to say outright. So going into the audit, some questions I have. So for the Convention and Cultural Services special event permitting, that's one that has not started yet. Mm-hmm. Maybe I will ask this question of our Assistant City Manager. It's my understanding that there are some changes that are currently happening under special events.
Correct. We are in the process of, special events used to happen in two different departments. You would have right-of-way events, and then you would have private property events, and now we are combining them to all be under one department, and we are putting in place automated processes to make it easier, setting up new policies and procedures. So we are smack in the middle of that. We have made some of that transition, but not all of that transition. That will continue throughout the spring and into the summer. So you will be looking back at something that does not reflect at what is now current. So that is something that maybe we want to rethink timing of, and maybe look at new process after it's had an opportunity to run for a while.
Okay, that's really helpful. So one recommendation that I would have is that maybe we hit pause on that one. And all of these suggestions are also me looking at the workload that you have, knowing that it's pretty intense, and making sure that we're prioritizing for you. So that's one that I think that makes a lot of sense for us maybe to hit pause on while they're implementing those changes. I don't think it would make a lot of sense for us to do an audit on something that everything's going to change, and then the recommendations that come out of that may not be relevant anymore. So, I'll see what my colleagues have to say about that. That's one comment I have. The other question I have is around illegal cannabis cultivation. Another question for our assistant city manager. How does that currently operate? Is there an ongoing program? Do we do it on a case-by-case basis? How does the
Right.
enforcement happen?
Sure. We had early on, when there was a substantial amount of illegal cultivation, somewhat of a program which has rendered itself moot by virtue of court rulings and what data we have access to in order to implement that. So we have also seen a substantive decrease in complaints, and now it's really case by case. So there's not really a program to audit. And, you know, PD has their policies, procedures that they go through when they have a call around illegal cannabis cultivation, work with the code enforcement as needed, but really it's a case by case, and there has not been a substantive amount, I would say, in the last couple of years. So.
Okay, that's also really helpful. Another recommendation I would have is that either we hit pause or we just eliminate this one. Not, again, a recommendation, pause, because one, if there's no program, it's hard to see what we're auditing other than how we're responding to case-by-case enforcement, which may be different and may depend on the case. So that's just one thing that, I do think it's important if we see it becoming a problem again, and maybe that pause is the right thing to do there, because if we do start to get more complaints, we want to make sure that we can address that. But at this time, especially given your workload, that's not something I see as a priority personally. And then on the code enforcement, you did make a recommendation or suggest that it could be possible to switch out. My personal preference, just based on my interest, is to replace the night team audit with the operations audit, because I think that the operations audit could cover some of what's happening in the night team and have a little bit of a bigger scope. I know that we're currently we're having other discussions in Law and Ledge about code enforcement and how we're able to, for specific to vacant lots and buildings. And so I am really interested in the operations of code enforcement, whether we're being as efficient and effective as possible. And so I do think it would be great to do an audit there, though my preference would be operations over the night team. And then on the proposed audits, I'm only going to do 3 because I am aware of your workload. One, homelessness response and coordination. I think that's really important. I know that we have had several audits and one underway on homelessness, but I also know it's the most important issue to Sacramentans. They want to know. They want to know how we're doing, what we're spending our money on, if it's working, and whether or not we're working well together. And so I think we should move forward on that one. I am interested in the police department overtime question because I know that's been raised many times by this council throughout the budget process over the years, and I'm not sure if it's ever been very clearly stated what the process is. I know there's been, answers, and I don't want to say that that hasn't been, but for me, I'm still unclear on what the process is, how we determine when overtime happens, how much, whether or not it's truly a one-to-one, as we've often said. So it'd be great to have an answer to that. And then the third one, just because I know I heard our city manager say that she's very interested in financial management budget audit. I know we'll have to find money for that, but I do think it's important because I want to support her. And I think that if she thinks that that's a priority, so do I. And so those are my comments for now. Those are the 3 that I would pick on the proposed. Those are some of the changes that I would make to your current work plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. First, the $250,000 that you had carry over from last year's budget cycle, did you incorporate that into this year's budget reductions, or were you able to move forward to be able to hire a consultant for the pedestrian audit?
No, we have not used that yet. It's not prior year savings, it's projected for this current year that we're currently in. We haven't used it. It was not something that we were, I think, allowed to submit as part of a reduction strategy because it was one-time savings, and I think they were looking for ongoing reduction strategies. Okay. So it's still, anticipated that we'll have some budget savings this year.
And then what would be the cost for the forensic audit for the city budget and or the cost for the pedestrian one? Like, what is typical consultant, how much for contracting it out?
Sure, I'm gonna see if Kevin remembers how much the animal care audit was. It was almost 300. yeah, I think it was almost 300,000. I'm not sure what the forensic audit is going to be, depending on how big of a scope it is. Just forensic audits are typically more expensive than a regular performance audit. It requires more, I guess, expertise in specific, like CPAs and stuff to conduct those, I think. So it would probably be a little bit more than that. But it also does depend on the scope of that project, which if it is selected, I would work with the council and the city manager to identify what the scope would be and what the interests are in that project. So it would be probably more than the savings that we'd have, so we might need to find a little bit more.
Okay, so that's my number one priority for your work plan moving forward. Obviously, we have the budget deficit this year. We're working on closing that. But for next year, I just really feel like we need to start off fresh and really look at every single department, look at the vacancies, look at any dollars that have not been spent, and that would be my number one priority. And just like Councilmember Maple, I'm supportive of you keeping your employees and not putting those reductions on the table so that you can complete the work that you have currently on the table right now, your work plan. We need to be able to move forward, and that's one thing with the auditor's office. You help us with efficiencies. You help us with process improvement, and that's cost savings down the line. And so I know we're going to be having these conversations at budget and audit, or in future budget conversations with all our charter officers. But for your work plan, we need these projects to get done, and that means being fully staffed. So I'll just leave the audit into the city's departments as my number one priority, and then I agree with Councilor Maple on the other ones too.
Okay, thank you for all the comments and just some preliminary thoughts. I would also entertain either holding or dropping the special event permitting and the illegal cannabis cultivation audits in light of some of the things that I think, frankly, are more valuable and the ones that have been on the proposed list for the year. I have a question about whether the Department of Utilities Physical Security Series is really something that's critical. What is that?
So we have a specific utilities auditor who can't audit anything else because she's funded by utilities. And so we work with them regularly, the department, to identify areas of risk. Last year, we did a big risk assessment and identified some potential audits. This was one of them that we still haven't gotten to, so we're rolling it over from the previous one. But it really is, I think they've had some instances where there were people that were coming onto DOU property without authority to be there, and so they wanted us to look at some of like their physical security processes to make sure that they are keeping people out. Yeah.
But the ultimate point is it's not fungible. I mean, that auditor can't.
They could do another DOU audit if there's
but not outside of
Yes.
of utilities. Okay.
Unless there's funding to replace the DOU funding,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I do agree with the Mayor Pro Tem with respect to the homelessness response protocol. I do think the police overtime audit makes sense. If we're going to look at code enforcement again, I would think it makes more sense to look at the operations than the night team. I do strongly think it makes sense to do an assessment of. I wouldn't necessarily call it walkability. I'd call it mobility in the downtown. So much of our economy is either advanced or retarded by the extent to which our downtown flourishes or doesn't, that having a physical environment that creates the greatest degree of attraction is critical. And so I think there are a number of steps we could take, some of which were suggested in the talk that we heard last week, I guess it was. And that kind of assessment to me could yield significant return on that investment. I recognize that if we were to contract for that, which to me would make sense, because I don't know that there's someone on your team that would say, yes, I'm the person who can do that, a specialized kind of work, that we would need to identify funding. And I do think the assessment of the city's budgeting practices makes sense, although I also think that since that would require funding, it needs more definition as to scope before you can have a meaningful conversation about whether it's a priority and affordable within the greater scheme of things. The urban forestry operations and maintenance, I think, would be useful, but I'd probably put it a half step back in terms of a priority, given all the considerations. So that's, I think we've got a couple candidates. We'll hear from the public, then we'll finalize what we want to adopt as a direction. But I think we've got at least a couple candidates of the ones on your roster that we could at least delay, if not let go. And then we've got some conversation about things we might want to add. I also don't know that it makes sense to do an analysis of the business operations tax if the finance department's going to go through that exercise in any case, which they can comment for themselves, of course, but I assume that's something that's on their plan of work to do.
Good morning, everyone. Pete Coletto, Finance Director. Yeah, so we did a survey of our peer cities and nearby jurisdictions and what their business operations taxes look like in preparation for the discussion we had at Law and Ledge regarding updating the city's BOT.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, yes?
I have two quick questions. For the Department of Public Works Urban Forestry Audit, does that include the contractors that we work with? Like the work that they do?
I mean, we would probably look at that if they're using contractors. My understanding is they're short-staffed, that they have to use more contractors, so that might be part of our analysis or our review.
Okay, and then my other question is the walkability assessment of downtown Sacramento. Is that the same thing as the pedestrian audit that we had requested?
No, it's a little bit different. This one is looking at more like street design and layout of the downtown core, I believe, versus the pedestrian safety. It would be more citywide. What programs we have? What are we doing to try to address some of those concerns?
I just wanted to make sure that there are two separate ones.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So why don't we take public comment?
I have two speakers, Lambert, then Keon Bliss.
This one is really going to shake it up now. First of all, I wasn't going to speak on this item, but then I saw and I told you I was at Arts and Culture, and I'm really speaking to the city attorney. You should really pay attention to what I'm saying here right now. I was at Arts and Culture yesterday, and I was asking questions about, is Wide Open Wall still on the payroll? Nobody touched it. I just heard this auditor say in her presentation that Wide Open Walls is still on the payroll or some kind of way. Now, when Mayor Steinberg was here, I went up in front of the council, because I'm not a coward. I went right up in front of the council and said, wait a minute. As a business owner, if someone can get a no written agreement and it's not audited, and you don't seem to be aggressive to try to figure out if they mismanaged the money, then I went up and said, well, as a business owner, can I get in that same line and get me an unwritten agreement too? Or is it just for white people? I meant that. And now I'm seeing up here on the screen that they're still on the payroll. They're getting paid. We're going to find out. We're going to find out who's authorizing Wide Open Walls and Sabonis, or whatever it's called, David Sabonis events. Who's authorizing that? Is it the city manager's office who's talking while I'm talking? Somebody is paying this group, according to the auditor, I saw wide open walls up on the screen. What are they still doing on the payroll? I've often said that the deficit is caused by a lot of the staff of this city.
Thank you for your comments. Keon
Okay.
Bliss?
Before Keon comes up, let's clarify this for Mr. Davis.
Ask if first it would come up. Was wide open walls on your list of?
Let's
something?
just clarify this point for
It
you.
was just identified as an audit we completed in fiscal year '23, which was the one that you originally talked about, like that we had done an audit of.
So
Yeah,
they're,
we're not saying there's,
Are they still on
no,
funding?
no.
No.
Okay, we're gonna find out.
Okay.
Why they did receive it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, Mr. Bliss.
Thank you.
Okay.
Majority of the city's budget does go to salaries and benefits for city employees, none of whom are the bigger recipients beyond the police department, which as of this last fiscal year comprises about 40% of our general fund discretionary budget. Glad to see that the police overtime practices is on just a year later than when we learned just how much money the city, like the police department's overtime has cost us in the years. I really want to encourage the council to prioritize not just police overtime practices audit, but also the budgeting practices audit. Considering the fact that, we're seeing fewer people actually engage in the recent budget survey, which gives me pause to wonder how city management and the city clerk's office is actually putting things out to members of the public. And then also the need to really look at how we are apportioning that. The performance metrics in particular need to be looked at because as it stands right now, there are barely any performance metrics to justify the level of spending for a lot of the departments, particularly the police department, which we found last year had the basic performance metric is how many officers there are per city and some diversity demographics and the response times, which doesn't measure anything or account for how they managed to collect more than $158 million in overtime between 2012 and 2024. I think the years of analysis should extend far beyond just 3 fiscal years, considering that 81% of this $158 million amount came after 2016 fiscal year, and recent investigations showing that no city employees outside the police department and fire department made more than 90% of.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Chair, I have no more speakers on this agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see if we can work through this. I think we had some potential consensus on holding the illegal cultivation and the, if I could read my writing, special event permitting audits. Is that something that?
I'm okay with that because of the changes being
Okay.
made in special permitting,
Okay,
right?
so
that-
we'll-
okay.
And Councilman Guerrero also told me before he stepped out that he supports that.
Okay, so Farishta, we can have that as a starting place.
sorry, is that removing it or just rolling it over with the intention that we're just gonna sit on it?
Well, since one was backward looking for something that no longer exists, that was the special event permitting. It seems to me we could drop that.
Okay.
The illegal cultivation seems to have become enough of a minor item that we could drop that.
If I may, the comment that Councilman Guerrero made before he left is that he would like it to be paused but not ended. And I know that's of particular interest and concern in his district.
Yeah.
So perhaps we pause for now. Okay.
So we put that one on hold,
Yeah,
but drop the special event.
okay.
Okay.
And BOT was
And BOT, I think we can leave with the finance department.
dropped, okay.
Now we've created all this headroom for you. Okay, so I've lost it, but the list of, let me get to the list of possibles. I do think that before we can decide whether to give a if you'll excuse the expression, green, red, or yellow light to the walkability assessment or the budgeting practices. We need to have more definition of scope and potential cost. And so my suggestion would be that we send those on to the full council, but on a contingent basis, that maybe between now and the time that it's heard by the council, working with the city manager's office, you can come up with some thoughts about scope and cost?
Yeah, absolutely, but I just a quick question. Both of those would be contracted out?
Yes.
So I think on both of those, we have as much time as we'd like to take to figure out scope, since we'd also need to figure out how to fund them and then provide authority for. So you could do a work plan that is the internal, where staff is going to be doing the work. And then you could have these add-ons that would be contracted out and figured out as we go.
That'll work. I just don't want to lose them in the process.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want them just to be delayed and then we all get on to other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just saying when this goes to council, that doesn't need to be decided then either, if we still feel like we're not ready with scope or cost.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question, Chair.
Yes.
So how do we want to go about the city auditor's work plan and then the budget reductions presentation that she will do at council? Because, we're asking her, we're going through the typical process of the 15% budget reductions, and then we're also assigning her more work, and then now we have 2 members here out of 4 of the budget saying we don't want to cut her budget and we want to be able to move forward with these work plans. So what's the best way of moving this conversation along?
I would say that the auditor needs to advise us in the context of the budget hearings what her capacity is. We can't decide that here. I think what we want to do is suggest to the council the audits we're interested in, and then it'll be up to the auditor to say, yes, I can do all those, or no, I can't do all those. I can only do X minus, and then have that conversation in the context of the budget.
And that's what we would do for every department, has their work plan going into budget, and you will get that same feedback through the presentations you're going to hear in March. And then in May and June would be your opportunity to say explicitly, if it's not clarified through the presentations, here's what that impact would be. And then council can make choices around, if we're funding this, then we are going to not fund that, because we have to remember that swap of keeping the budget balanced.
And by the way, could we merge the code enforcement night operations into the overall operations?
We could. I was going to mention that those, like you mentioned, those are not really one-for-one, because we did try to create our work plan last year to have some audits that are a little smaller in scope that we could turn around quicker. So we could roll it in. It's just, auditing all of code enforcement is just a bigger audit, takes more resources and time.
Yeah, I think to the extent that there's any efficiency at all, it makes sense to, rather than bifurcate those and do 2, do 1.
Okay.
If we do 1 at all. So my suggestion would be that we pause the illegal cultivation audit, we drop the special event permitting audit, we merge, how many verbs can I get in this?
Wait,
We
Chair,
merge.
instead of drop, continue the special event permit.
We merge the code enforcement operations into one that would be overall operations, that we, I'll say, put on a parallel track the walkability and the budgeting practices for an assessment of scope and estimated cost, and that the remainder of the suggested audits, homelessness response, police department overtime, and urban forestry, we send on to the council for discussion.
Okay.
Does that cover the waterfront?
Yeah, so we're basically rolling over all the proposed audits, including in the work plan, we're removing special event permits and BOT, combining the code with the 19-1, and pausing illegal cannabis, keeping it on the work plan, rolling it over, but not starting it next fiscal year.
Yes, yes, and did you say dropping the special event permitting?
Yes, but Councilmember Talamantes did mention pausing it, so I'm not sure. Do we keep it on there and not work on it, kind of like the cannabis one?
Yeah, because I think that's what Councilmember Guerra's request was, instead of just stopping the special events.
That was the cultivation.
Oh, okay.
That was the cultivation. No, I mean, the event was the one where the process is changing, and so if we were to do that, it would be a look back at something that no longer exists, so it doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, we could also look at their current practices to see if it makes sense, or we could pause it and wait.
Yeah.
If that's something that comes up later.
I would say this, that I would drop it for now, and then if it becomes a salient issue again, let it rise from the ashes as a phoenix.
All right.
Okay,
Makes sense.
okay. So, we need a motion.
So moved, what you just said, all of it together.
Second.
Do you have that, Madam?
Is that clear?
Madam Clerk, you've got
There was a
that?
lot of words.
All right,
We'll submit it to you in writing afterwards.
yeah. All right, any further comment or question? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. We have an absent member. Okay, now we can go back to item 4, Madam Clerk.
Item 4 is the City Auditor's 2026 Community Survey.
And, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, may I suggest, in the interest of time, given that we are already running into our closed session, that maybe we suggest a sped-up presentation?
Do a truncated presentation.
I do have Joyce Chi from my office that's going to be doing the presentation, so we'll ask her to skip
Okay.
forward on some of the stuff.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the Budget and Audit Committee. My name is Joyce Chi. I'm a Principal Fiscal Policy Analyst with the City Auditor's Office, and with me is First Shawari, our City Auditor. I'm here to present the results of our 2026 Community Survey, which is the 6th time our office has conducted this survey. For some background, the survey results are comprised of responses from 2 groups of survey respondents, which is consistent with our previous surveys. One group, which we call the representative sample, includes those that were randomly selected to participate in the survey for statistically valid survey results, and the other group, which we call the open participation group, includes those that were not part of the randomly selected group but decide to take the survey on their own. For the representative sample, 7,500 households were randomly selected from across the city to receive the survey. Similar to previous year surveys, we oversampled in some districts 2, 3, 5, and 8 due to historically low response rates. The representative sample survey was administered from January 2nd to February 13th and was open for about 6 weeks. We received 450 surveys, which is a 6% response rate. This is a statistically significant sample, has a 95% confidence interval, and a plus or minus 5% margin of error. The open participation survey was available from January 23rd to February 13th, 2026, about 3 weeks. We received 1,454 surveys, and the results are analyzed separately in the report and on the interactive online dashboard. The link to the dashboard is on the slide here, as well as on the City Auditor's website. The rest of the presentation focuses on the results of the representative sample, but the results from the open participation group are generally similar. As a recap, the community survey captures residents' opinions considering 10 central facets of a community, starting from the top and going clockwise. These are safety, mobility, community design, community connection, health and wellness, economy, utilities, parks and recreation, natural environment, and education, arts, and culture. This slide shows a proportion of residents who rated the community facets positively for quality and the relative importance of each facet. Also displayed is whether local quality ratings were similar, lower, or much lower than communities across the country, also referred to as the national benchmark.
Building on the previous slide, this gap analysis chart highlights areas that the city may want to consider as potential areas for improvement by comparing the gaps between the quality and importance ratings. Ideally, facets that are rated high in importance to the community would also be rated high in quality. As you can see in the green box, examples include utilities and natural environment. However, similar to previous surveys, safety, economy, and mobility were rated as high in importance but lower in quality. The report highlights 3 community strengths, which we will go into more detail in later slides. First, there is an overall satisfaction with the quality of life, with 68% of respondents ranking it as excellent or good. Second, parks and recreation opportunities likely contribute to the high quality of life, with a 64% positive rating, and community connection is valued by residents, with residents feeling that the city is welcoming, draws diverse people, and has a strengthening sense of community. The report also highlights 3 focus areas. Mobility-centered results may indicate an opportunity for growth as various ratings remain low. Governance and city leadership results highlight opportunities for continued improvement such that relevant positive ratings remain below 40%, and economic challenges persist in the community. Ratings for overall economic health at 38%, downtown vibrancy at 33%, and employment opportunities at 46% remain below benchmarks. The next several slides provide trend information for questions asked in the survey about the different facets of the community. The percentages reported in these slides are the percent of respondents that rated each question positively, generally excellent, or good. The arrows above the 2026 responses represent how the city compares to the benchmark communities with populations over 400,000, which is about 23 communities, that have also taken the survey in the past 5 years. When the city's response is within 10 percentage points of the benchmark communities, it will show as similar, represented by the horizontal gray arrows. When it is more than 10 percentage points difference, it will show a up or down arrow.
You know, these are actually quite interesting, but in the interest of time, I think we're going to have to bypass them for the moment. I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries. Okay. Would you like me to just scroll through them, or?
Yeah, can you maybe?
Okay. All right, well, this is
At
the
least
one.
what you've covered, so people, if they can look online and get these results. So if anyone's watching, they won't know that they can't access this, even though you're not going to talk to us about it. So let's just highlight which aspects you're covering. So this one's governance.
Oh, sure. I'll just say one sentence then. Both for the overall direction that Sacramento is taking and the overall confidence in the Sacramento government, there is a downwards trend, but there has been an increase since the 2023 survey. For economy, we're seeing several downwards trends for overall economic health, the vibrancy of downtown commercial area, and economic development, as highlighted earlier. For mobility, we're also seeing some downwards trends for the overall quality of the transportation system, street repair, sidewalk maintenance. For mobility, we are seeing an increased use of public transportation, but the ease of travel, other than by car, has been trending downwards. For community design, we're also seeing some downwards trends for well-designed neighborhoods, land use planning and zoning, and overall appearance. For utilities, we do see some upwards trends with sewer services, drinking water, utility billing, and access to high-speed internet. For safety, although we're seeing some downwards trends for overall feeling of safety and in the downtown area since 2023, those have actually bounced back a little bit. Crime prevention has also demonstrated upwards trends, although the percentage is still on the lower side at 27%. For the natural environment, most of these are comparable to benchmark communities. However, of note is cleanliness, which has demonstrated a downwards trend since 2018, and despite the small increase since 2023, it is still lower than benchmark communities. For parks and recreation, we see a decreasing trend with city parks, and the ratings for recreational opportunities is lower than the custom benchmark. For health and wellness, we are seeing an increase in the overall health and wellness opportunities since 2022, and ratings for overall health is also on an upwards trend. For education, arts, and culture, we're seeing an increase since 2022 for overall opportunities for education, culture, and the arts, as well as increased opportunities to attend these events and community support for the arts. For community connection, overall residents' connection and engagement with the community are on an upwards trend. However, taking care of vulnerable residents is rated the lowest on this slide at 22% and also lower than custom benchmark. In addition to the standard questions, we also have some custom questions that we asked in the survey. This is about a resident's priorities for how to spend the Measure U fund. As you can see here, affordable housing and homeless supportive services and community-based mental health and wellness are the top two rated as high priority. And on the second slide is just the rest of the options and their respective ratings. As mentioned earlier, we have an online interactive dashboard that allows you to filter the results by a variety of respondent characteristics. This includes council district, income, age, and several others. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I know you had a lot more to tell us.
All good.
I appreciate you expediting the presentation. I'm going to see questions. No, we're going to let you off the hook this morning. But I do encourage people to look through this because there is quite a bit of interesting data to say the least. So this must be a. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on this?
I do have one speaker, Keon Bliss.
Okay. Looks like I don't see Keon at the moment. Okay.
He's
Appears
not
we
here.
have
I'm happy
no
to make a
speakers.
motion to forward it to the full city council for review.
Okay. We have a motion. Chair will second.
I'll second. Oh, you second.
All right. We have by the vice mayor. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Now we go to the active side of the house, huh? Okay.
Item 6 is Active Transportation Commission recommendations from 2025 annual report.
Good afternoon.
Members of the committee, my name is Chris Doherty. I am the Transportation Planning Manager in the Sustainability and Mobility Division of Public Works, and I also staff the Active Transportation Commission. We'll keep this very brief for this presentation in the interest of time. I'm also joined today by outgoing Chair Arlette Hodel, who will be going through the recommendations for us. Again, the item before you today are the recommendations from the 2025 Active Transportation Commission Annual Report. This item was heard in front of the Personnel and Public Employees Committee on January 27th, where we were asked at that time to bring this to the Budget and Audit Committee, which is why we're here today. So with that, we have 8 recommendations that that the commission is proposing, and I'm going to hand it off to Arlette. And in the interest of time, I apologize, I'm going to scan through the details and go right to the summary screen. Go ahead.
Arlette Hodel, past chair, Active Transportation Commission. Our recommendations reflect Active Transportation Commission's overriding concern for the safety and health of city residents. At the top of the list, increase funding, number 1. Help make our city more competitive by doubling the average amount for active transportation grants. Without a permanent place in the city's budget, this is the best way to gain ground in the grant-seeking world. Number 2, implement traffic calming toolbox. The most significant benefit is the reduction in both the frequency and severity of vehicle crashes. By reducing vehicle speeds, the risk of serious injury or death for pedestrians and bicyclists in a collision is greatly diminished. Number 3, increase funding for the Quick Build program. Quick Build street design projects get bikeable and walkable infrastructure projects built fast and affordably. Number 4, implement leading pedestrian intervals citywide. LPIs allow pedestrians to enter a crosswalk 3 to 7 seconds before vehicles receive a green light. This enhances visibility and can reduce conflicts with turning traffic by up to 60%. Number 5, develop a citywide Safe Routes to School program. This is a national movement that aims to make it easier and safer for children to walk or bike to school. Number 6, implement no turn on red policy citywide. Prohibiting turns on red eliminates conflicts between right-turning vehicles and vulnerable road users in the crosswalk. Studies have found that allowing right turn on red increases crashes involving people walking and biking by more than 50%. 7, pedestrian safety review of proposed transitional housing. Sidewalks are an important part of our transportation system and should be as important as traffic and bicycle infrastructure. Number 8, expand the creative crosswalk policy. Creative crosswalks improve safety and visibility, calm traffic, reflect local culture and neighborhood history. This is a relatively low-cost way for the city to improve infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
So just to wrap up, these recommendations consist of about $8.2 million in a one-time year one ask with an ongoing recurring of about $7.7 million in total. So with that, that concludes our presentation. We're available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. And again, I apologize. I know you sped through that. You would have liked to have described in greater detail the recommendations you're making. Some of us are big fans of the Active Transportation Commission, so we pay some attention maybe to that one more than some of the others. But Councilmember Maple.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you for your service on the commission and for the entire commission's work on this, and of course our wonderful staff that work on this every day. It's no secret that this is something that I care about, as well as many members of the City Council. I also was, looking at this, the 5 Vision Zero corridors in Sacramento, and 3 of the 5 are in my district. The other 2 are in District 2. So I think the appropriate people serve on this committee to have this discussion. It's also not lost on me that we're in a budget deficit, and this has in fact, we have been the entire time on the council. But, I do think that people's health and safety and their lives matter, and the experience that people have, and I think it's it should be a top priority for this council and the city to prioritize these types of investments. And so it would be, I would be very interested in moving this discussion forward in the budget discussions for the full city council about whether or not this is something we can take on its whole form, or whether or not we can take parts of this for this year and maybe leave others for a future year. I know that's not ideal, but based on the budget situation that we currently have, I'm very interested in that. I'm also I want to appreciate the cost amounts associated with the different items. I think that makes it easier for us to visualize and understand. I think there's a few things on here that seem like they would be relatively low cost for what the value that they could bring, including the leading pedestrian intervals. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've certainly been in that situation where I've, walked out when I had a green light and almost been hit by a car by someone who wasn't paying attention because they were only looking at their green light. And as well as the right turn on red, I think that's problematic in and of itself, and I think that would make a lot of sense. I've also received some emails about the creative crosswalk policy. I think so before I was in office, it was something that I looked into as well. I think there's great ways that we could activate community members who are really interested in being a part of the solution, and that is one of them. So, but in total, I think we should move the entirety of these recommendations forward for a full discussion at the council in context of our budget, so that we can have that debate, because I think it's important enough to do that. And so that I will leave my comments there. That would be my direction, and if the rest of the committee agreed. Yeah, I think it's just review, discuss, and provide direction, but I'm happy to make a motion.
Say that, but we could adopt.
Okay, well, then I'll happily make a motion to move the entirety of the commission's recommendations forward for a full discussion at the city council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that, but I have a comment too.
Yes.
I sit on the personnel committee and the budget committee, and so I made this comment at personnel. Every single commission has their work plans. Every single commission has requests for the budget. And we need to find a way of incorporating the commission's feedback and you guys can have a seat if you guys want, and the feedback of the city council as we move forward in our budget process. Because what I don't want is, and what we've done is every single commission that comes to personnel with like budget asks, we forward them here. And then we forward them to the city council. And it feels like we're just kind of bouncing around and not having these frank, honest conversations like we should, which, I mean, that happens at the city council dais also. But like, we have to find a better process for how we move forward next year on these budget asks so that we can be more productive and also respectful of the people's time. So I guess it's just kind of thinking about both chairs and figuring out what our process looks like. So look forward, hopefully, working with you for next year to create a process for it.
Fair comment. You guys can sit down if you want. You don't have to. You don't have to hover. No. I share the sentiments of both of my colleagues, and I do think that looking at these recommendations in the context of the overall transportation budget makes sense. There's a premium for us in becoming creative and for looking for spending our money where we can get the biggest bang for the buck. Some of these things I think really do fall into that category. I am a huge fan of the quick build approach. One, because it makes demonstrable improvements, but two, because it also sends a message to community members that the projects they want to see done aren't years and years away, that something can be done in the near term. I also think the items such as the creative crosswalks, the safe routes to school, I mean, those things to me pay huge dividends and at a relatively low investment. I will say that with respect to the no right turn on red, I think it needs to be calibrated to different parts of the city where it may make more sense than some other parts, because there are parts of the city where I think that if we were to institute that change, what we would generate is more frustration than anything else, and then non-compliance. So I just think that that's a cautionary note on that aspect. But in general, I fully concur that I would like to see this discussed in the context of the budget, so we can not treat this as somehow distinct and separate from what we're doing otherwise with respect to transportation, and so that we consider where, especially on active transportation, there may be sources we can go to beyond what we're already plumbing today, if any. So we have a motion. You wanted an additional comment?
I'm so sorry. I know we're short on time, but I did forget something that I wanted to bring up,
Sure.
if that's okay, Chair. And more for the members of the public and the audience who may be watching, but I did see that our city clerk announced that there is a citizens group that has filed a measure for potentially November. We don't know if it'll be qualified, but it has been filed, so if folks want to read the language, it's public on the city's website. My understanding that measure in part would potentially have funds for transportation, active transportation related projects potentially. And so one request I would have of our staff is, to the extent, I don't want to add too much work to your plate, but really maybe helping us understand if that is something that is ultimately successful in November, how could that impact some of the plans that we already have in place, including some of the recommendations from this commission. If let's say we're unable to find the full funding for this in our city budget this time around, what could that look like next year if that measure is successful? So I'd love to see some information come back from you on that. Thank you.
Okay, strictly factual. Okay, we have no one who's signed up to speak on this item. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. And I believe that completes the business to come before us. Oh, do we have an off-agenda speaker?
I do have one speaker.
Okay,
Chair, I have one speaker, Lambert, for matters not on the agenda.
okay.
And then, if it
Take that.
pleases the chair, we'll need 2 more council members in chambers, and then we can adjourn to our closed session.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely won't go past 2 minutes. What I wanted to say is, during the last time I was up here, there was an exchange, and the millennials have notified me that Someone said 2023. They said that. There's a lot of people following what I'm saying. Before I head out to sell a lot of cheesecakes and carrot cake, which is getting ready to take off in a real way. I didn't come down here to hear about 2023. On the agenda, it says 26, 27. That's why I came. I didn't want to see anything that says 23. That's where you made the mistake. So I have to go study why 2023 was even mentioned to me. This has nothing to do with ego and all of that. This is a principled approach I'm taking here. First of all, I want to thank the auditor and also Pete Coletto with the Department of Finance. They inspire me because they know what graphs are and they know what results are, and I'm a graph survey person. But you made a tremendous mistake if I go study it and I hear that you were talking about 2023 to me, because that's a waste of my time. I don't really want to hear about something that's not on the agenda. Who wants to hear that? But what you did tip was that Wide Open Walls was up on that screen again. And I have a problem with that group, not the group. I have a problem with whoever gave that no written agreement, and we can't get one.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
And may I ask one of the city attorneys in the back to have some council members join us in chambers so that we may adjourn to the closed session?
Can we adjourn the committee meeting?
There's one.
No?
I think you need to sit down there so she can accuse you of being drunk. There you go. Here, you want to slam this?
It's not water. We should adjourn the committee meeting and then when you have a quorum.
Look, 5.
All right,
Good
there we go.
afternoon. We are going to adjourn the Budget and Audit Committee meeting to a City Council closed session. I do have a quorum of council members in chambers. There are 2 items on the agenda. We have no speakers on any of the items on the closed session agenda. Those items are conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6. Designated representatives are Laney Milstein, Aaron Donato, and Tim Davis. Employee organizations are Sacramento City Exempt Employees Association, Sacramento Police Officers Association, International Union of Operating Engineers, Stationary Engineers Local 39, Sacramento Area Firefighters, Local 522, Sacramento Sierra Buildings and Constructions Trades Council, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 447, Auto Marine and Specialty Painters Local 1176, Western Council of Engineers, International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, and all unrepresented groups. Item number 2 is Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54956.95. The title is City Auditor. So Chair, you may adjourn to closed session.
Okay. We're adjourned.